Any ambitious project has the potential to fail. It's something we all go through. But what's not so common is having a really solid way to learn from it. So in this explainer, we are going to dive into a playbook that's all about turning those, well, painful setbacks into your most powerful strategic asset.
I want you to just think about that for a second. What if we stopped seeing failure as this embarrassing thing we have to hide and started treating it like a goldmine of unfiltered data? What if every single misstep was actually a clue showing you exactly what to fix for next time? That's the huge mindset shift we're going to unpack today.
And here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about reframing what failure even means. Then, we're going to look at two critical views, internal and external. From there, we'll dig deep to find the real root cause. And finally, we'll turn all that insight into a real action plan for the future. Okay, so when a project goes south, what's the first thing that usually happens? It's almost always one of two things, right? Either the blame game starts or everyone just kind of agrees to never speak of it again. Both are totally useless. Instead, what if you thought about it like creating a black box for your project, like on an airplane, to systematically and calmly figure out exactly what went wrong?
So, what is a failure review? Well, it's not about pointing fingers. It is a forward-looking tool. The whole point is to be constructive, figure out what happened, make your strategy stronger, and make sure you don't make the same mistakes twice. It's about getting smarter, not getting even. The very first step in any honest review is to look inward. Yep, you've got to look in the mirror. This is where we break down everything that was actually within the team's control. It takes some guts, for sure, and a lot of honesty, but this is where the most powerful lessons are usually hiding. And think about how much is actually in your control. We're talking about everything from the big picture strategy and leadership calls all the way down to team performance, how you spent the money, and, of course, communication. Again, this isn't about blaming Jane from accounting. It's about looking at how effective our own systems and plans really were. But of course, no project happens in a bubble. So after you look in the mirror, you have to look out the window. This is all about identifying those big forces that were happening outside your control, but that definitely had an impact on your project.
And these are exactly the kinds of external forces we're talking about. Did a new competitor just pop up out of nowhere? Did your customers suddenly start wanting something completely different? Maybe there was an economic downturn or a new regulation that just changed the whole game. If you ignore these things, you're only getting half the story. So putting it all together, you get the complete picture. Looking in the mirror, that's about your execution, your decisions, the stuff you can actually fix. Looking out the window is about the world you're operating in. Now, you can't change those forces, but you can absolutely get better at spotting them and reacting to them. You need both to really get what happened. Okay, so we've got our list of internal and external factors. Great. But that's just the beginning. That's the what happened. The most important step now is to go deeper, to understand why it happened. We have to find the real root cause, not just the symptoms on the surface. And the investigation starts with something really simple, a timeline. Just the facts. What were the key moments? When did the first little red flags pop up? When did you miss that big deadline? Laying it all out in order gives you a clear map of the symptoms. It shows us what happened and, just as important, when. Okay, now to get from the what on our timeline to the real why, we use this brilliant technique called the 5 whys. It's kind of like peeling an onion. You take an event from your timeline, like key milestone failure, and you ask, why? Then you take that answer and you ask, well, why was that? And you keep drilling down, layer by layer, until you just can't ask why anymore. That's usually when you've hit the root cause. And that's really the whole point, isn't it? Don't just patch up the surface level problem. You have to find the broken process or that flawed assumption that let the problem happen in the first place. That is how you make real lasting change. So this brings us to the final and I'd say most important part of this whole thing, because all this analysis is totally worthless if it doesn't lead to action. We have to take everything we've figured out and build a real, concrete plan to make sure we're smarter and stronger next time. The goal here is to turn all that deep analysis into crystal clear lessons. By answering these kinds of questions, like what could we have done differently, or which of our processes are broken, you build the foundation for your action plan. This is how you distill all the noise into a clear signal. And this is how those lessons actually come to life. See, instead of just saying, oh, we need to communicate better, you create a specific action item. You give it a priority, you assign it to a team, and you give it a hard deadline. This is how learning actually gets baked into the way you work. It creates real accountability. If you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. When you approach failure with structure and with honesty, it stops being this liability you have to hide. It actually becomes one of your most valuable strategic assets, a clear roadmap showing you exactly what you need to improve.
So I'll leave you with this challenge. The next time you hit a setback, ask yourself these two questions. First, was the main cause internal, our execution, or was it external, a shift in the market? And second, based on that answer, what is the one real structural change you are going to make to stop it from happening again? Now that is how you turn failure into fuel.